Hi, today we're going to be making Megabot from Big Hero 6. He's a very simple character, minus, having to draw the face decals. He's just made up of spheres and this octagon shape, this sort of tube, tapered tube, and that's it. Pretty simple. So that's why I thought this would be a good idea for a beginner course. We're going to be making everything that you see here. So you can see that there's a lot of detail in this. There's a scratch texture. We're doing sort of a metal effect on the body paint, the decals and all that stuff I will provide to you. So in the description of this video, I'm adding a zip file. In the zip file will be the happy face, the angry face decal, the scratch texture, a reference image, and then an environment map. And I'm going to show you how to install all these things. The one thing that you will need to do is when you download it and unzip it, you'll need to figure out how to get those images over to your device. I use an iPad, so I just airdrop them over into my photo library, and then it's really easy for me to install these. So while it looks pretty detailed, it's also really easy. So I think it's going to be fun. I believe in you. You can do this. Let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to start a new file so that we're both starting from the same place. And why don't we do that right now? I'm going to come up to File, and then I'm just going to tap New. And here we have a default sphere. And what I want to do before I get started is I'm going to turn it back to my normal sort of dark charcoal gray background. Come up here and tap on this image icon. In this rectangular box, you can tap and then you can pick a color. I'm going to punch in a hex value. So I'm tapping on this last option right here. And the hex value normally has 6 digits. You can shortcut it by just typing 2, maybe even 3. So if it's all the same number, which my hex value is 111111. You can shortcut it, I think, even by just typing 11. Maybe not. So you need at least 3 digits for that. There you go. So this is kind of my default dark color that I'm normally working on. I just want to make sure that my grid is readable. Hopefully you guys can see that. The default sphere, I need to warn you, isn't perfectly spherical. It's great if you're just going to come in and do some sculpting right away. For us, we need a perfect spherical sphere. And this one is more like someone started with a cube and then rounded it, trying to make it a sphere, but not quite. So trust me, it's not perfectly spherical. So I usually delete this when I need a true sphere. So I'm just going to hit delete, and now I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to add sphere. And this one is a true sphere. One of the things that you need to do, hopefully you've downloaded the zip file in the description, is set up your environment map. Let's do that right now. You need to come up to this light icon, kind of looks like a sun. And down here, you can see environment map or environment. And this is your environment image. Environment maps or environment images are just that. They're just a 2D flat image. And someone's taking a 360 in all directions photo. So that's why it kind of looks like this fisheye lens look, because it's being wrapped. So imagine that we're in a much larger sphere. We're standing inside a much larger sphere. And on the inside is this image. So it's reflecting the brightest parts of this image, the whitest parts of this photo are where our lights are emitting. And where it's black, there's no light emitting. So one way to realize, take a look at this image and then watch when I switch to, I'm going to switch to this chrome. So you can see it's now mirroring the world around us. You can see that image. So that's what it's doing. It's providing light. Watch if I uncheck environment, it goes completely black. So that image is our light source. And if we tap into this, I'm just tapping on the image itself. Nomad has 10 default environment maps. So watch as I cycle through these, some of the color influence that happens. So this is, if we take a look at the image, it's a very amber image. It's like this indoor incandescent amber lighting, and that's being projected onto our white sphere. So imagine if you were trying to paint and you had all this orange lighting. No matter what you paint, the color influence is going to sort of make your painting a little bit orangish. So there are ways to avoid this color influence, and that would be to have a black and white image. So there is one default black and white image. I actually like this one, this Vintage Measuring Lab. So the one that I included in the zip is actually Vintage Measuring Lab, but I've made it black and white and then re-imported it in. So if you want to use this one and follow along, all you need to do is hit this import button here, and then wherever you put your image, just go find it. For me, I have an iPad. I just put it in my photo library. So that's where I would go. And then I would just pick it, and then it would show up here. And the two options that you get are exposure, which we won't play with just yet, but we are going to adjust it later, and then rotation. And this is just the direction. It's spinning your environment map horizontally. So there's another gesture too that's a shortcut for this rotation. You tap 3 fingers on the screen and then you drag. You can see the rotation of this. You could either do this, rotate it. You can also rotate just the camera. So watch if I tap front. If I tap front one more time, then it gives us the back angle and it's a little darker, but we can still play with this. Next thing we're going to do is set up our reference image. And to do that, I have a method that I like. I'll just point out quickly that in that menu where we change the background color, you could add a reference image, like literally you just bring in an image. Here's the one that we're going to use. The downside and why I don't use this reference image. So this is like probably the recommended like way to set up a reference image if you were to follow maybe like the Nomad user manual. But what's not happening is when I pinch and zoom my geometry, so I have a sphere here, when I pinch and zoom it, the reference image is stationary, and that's a positive in some scenarios. But for me, I like to move around and I like to rotate my camera, but I want those two things to be in sync. So this doesn't work for my purpose, especially for this particular video. So I'm going to turn that off and I'm going to show you a different way. So just uncheck reference image. So what we're going to do is come up to the scene menu and we're going to hit add. This is your primitives view. You can pick any one of these things and drop them in. I'm going to hit plane. And then I want you to also note this scene menu is a layers view of every object that exists in your scene. So we have a sphere and we have a plane, and those are the two things that we can select. Okay, so I'm going to turn the sphere off for just a moment. And here's our plane. And then I'm going to go down to my gizmo and just make my gizmo active. And over here, I'm going to turn off this one, but over here we have this tool strip and there's 2 snaps. One's for a grid snap and one's for a rotational snap. I want you to turn on the rotational snap and set it to 90. I already have it at 90, but you can tap the number, whatever number you have, and type in 90. And then we're going to grab the red ring, rotation ring. And if you just start pulling downward, eventually it'll just snap. I don't know why I accidentally duplicated, but so this is what we want. We rotate the plane. So I'm spinning around because I want to find my front on the snap cube. This is the snap cube. And I want to tap front, and then I want to just hit my lock icon for a moment. And now I provided a reference image, and my reference image is square, and I made it square on purpose because it's really easy to apply a square image to a square plane. If you use this method in the future and you find an image on the internet that you want to do a similar thing with, but that image is maybe a landscape or it's not a perfect square, I have a reference image tutorial that you can watch, and I show you how to set up the plane so that it matches the image that you downloaded, and then you can continue on from there. So this will be easy. So we have our plane. I just want you to do one thing for me, and that is come up to the 3 dots here, tap it, and every piece of geometry has a grid. You can see the grid as we kind of play with this division X control. We don't need the grid on here, so I'm going to take this all the way down till we have only one face on each side of this plane. So I'm setting it to 0 because we're not going to need the grid for any reason. And a lot of times I turn on wireframe, and when you turn on wireframe, you would see that grid. And when you have grid and wireframe on, you can get visually very busy fast. So, okay, I'm going to turn these 2 things off for a moment. There we go. So now the next thing we're going to do is come up to this material tab, tap on that. Then you want to scroll down to the bottom to the textures area. I've done 2 different types of applications for this purpose of doing a reference image. You can do color, and you would tap here to add it for color, and you could do emissive, and you would tap here to do it for emissive. Quickly to explain the difference is if you print it out on a piece of paper, the image, your reference image, that would be like color. If you looked at that same image on your computer monitor, that would be like emissive because emissive has a backlit sort of look. It's very bright. It looks like you're looking at the same image on a computer monitor or a TV. So we're going to do emissive. I'm going to tap here on this block. So like I mentioned, I put things into my photo library so that I can bring them in easily. So I'm going to tap on photos. I'm going to tap on this image, and then we're done. It's a square image on a square plane. I didn't perfectly center it, so we're going to have to do a little bit of centering on this. And now what we can do is go up to our scene menu, unhide our sphere, and the sphere is very large. The thing that you don't want to do here is scale your sphere to match your reference image. You don't want to do that. We actually want to take our reference image and blow our reference image up to match our sphere. Because right now we have our sphere set to its native size of 1. What I did is I just tapped on the gizmo menu, and you can see translation means your position, rotation is your rotation, and your scale should be 1. Let's set it to 1. If it's not 1, maybe I accidentally touched that. So it's a scale of 1. We want everything that we bring in, the primitives or our shapes, to always have sort of their native scale. So 1 here is good. I'm gonna tap on with my finger, tap on the plane. Hopefully it selected it. Yes, plane. You can always check the scene menu to see what's selected. And I have my gizmo selected. I'm gonna tap this outer ring and just start scaling it up. We can pinch and zoom to make this a little easier to do. So I'm gonna scale it up, and I'm just trying to match the center. I'm trying to align the center sphere of our reference image. I can see that I just need to make it bigger and come down a bit. And then I would just say rough it in as best you can for right now. This is pretty good. I'm gonna leave it like that. And then this is our setup. We don't have to do a lot more. I might adjust the scale as we add more spheres of our reference image just to get it aligned as tight as I can. Right now, this is perfect. The whole thing about keeping the sphere at its native size is because of our snap to grid function that we'll be using. So I'm going to turn off the plane for just a moment, and I'm going to turn on our grid. If we're not zoomed in too far, then we kind of only see this grid, these squares. These squares are an increment of 1. If I zoom into one of those squares, we have a 10 by 10 grid within the larger square. So these are an increment of 0.1. And where you would punch those increments in is the snap over here, snap. So I can type in 1 or 0.1. Let me show you what happens when we have snap to grid on for 1. Our sphere is an increment of 1, remember, so it should jump over perfectly to every grid where each cross is happening on the grid. So this is a good thing. And if I were to do 0.1, then we'd be moving at the increment of each smaller square inside of the larger grid square. I like to keep the native scale because I like to move around and use the grid snapping. So now we need to just make visible our reference image. And now let's clone our sphere and add the 3 spheres that we see here. There's only one difference between all 3 of these center spheres, is that the head actually has 2. I don't know if I showed it to you when we were rotating, but there's a casing around the top head and it has a hole in it. Let me see if I can reference that real quick. So here's an image from the movie Big Hero 6 of that character. You can see that he has that red face, but around it is like a sharp edge. And that's actually a sphere within another sphere. So we're going to make that. So for the first sphere, we're going to clone it and make the hips. We kind of have the torso sphere now. There's a clone here, I just want to point out. In the scene menu, there's another clone. And then on each layer, there's another clone. I'll just note that sometimes I have problems with this clone here, and I end up using the clone inside here. So if we run into that issue, we'll see. Right now we have just one sphere. So let's hit clone and let's see if that worked. So that didn't work. So I'm going to use this clone, and that one did work. We have snap turned on at an increment of 1. Make sure sphere selected. Okay, we're going to hit clone again. Okay, 2 spheres. We're going to hide our plane, our reference image for now, just because I want to show you. So now when we snap, our 2 spheres are touching right at the surface level. They're perfectly because of that grid snapping. So that's what we want. I'm going to clone again. Clone. I'm using the one inside the menu because of some weird quirk that doesn't. So you can see this makes it real easy to make them snap to each other. All right, I'm going to turn back on this, and now we can do any extra. I'm going to turn off snap because I now have my reference image selected. I'm just going to pull it out just to see how good of a job I did. Pretty good. I think we're set for where the position of the reference, the scale and position of our reference image. So now we can continue to work from here. One thing you can do while you have the reference image selected, if you come up to the material and scroll to the top, you can go from opaque to blending, and then this will give you the ability to lower the transparency of your reference image if that's helpful to you. You know, you can make it real faint, and then we could still see it, but maybe it's not, you know, that intense white can be a little overwhelming. Okay, now what we need to do is make that head, that sort of outer shell of the head, and it has a hole in it. So here I'm going to tap on the head sphere. So this particular sphere will be the one that we put the decals for the happy face and the angry face on. And then we need the outer casing. So I'm going to come down to this menu here, this shortcuts bar. I'm going to tap solo, and solo hides all the other things that aren't currently selected. And then if I want to bring them back, I can just tap solo again and they come back. This is a very useful process tool, a way to clear out things that you're not working on so that you can focus. Okay, so we're going to leave this one alone. I'm going to turn on the wireframe, and I want to point out the fact that there are two spheres in the scene menu add primitives options. There's this sphere, and then there's UV sphere. And I'm going to bring in a UV sphere. This is the other one that we haven't used yet. And here, let me bring it side by side. I'm going to turn snap on so we can easily snap to our positions. Okay, I want you to just take a look at these side by side and notice that, let me turn off my gizmo for a moment. And you can see that the geometry is different, and it's really a choice. I wouldn't say that one's better than the other. It's all dependent on the application, how you're going to use it. I'm going to show you how I edit this particular UV sphere and why it makes the most sense and why I really need to use this one. Okay, let's go into it. So we need to cut a hole out, and then this sphere will be our outer sphere, and this will be our inner sphere with the faces on it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to unlock our snap cube, unlock it. I'm going to switch to the right camera view, and I'm going to come up to our scene menu and just hide that other sphere. So we're using the UV sphere. And now I also need to rotate this sphere 90 degrees. So with it selected, I'm going to switch to gizmo, and we have snap rotation on, set to 90 degrees. So I just need to grab the red rotation handle here and just pull until it snaps. So there we go. So we wanted this angle. I need to do one other thing too, and I want to increase the mesh density. And right now there are two states to every object. It's either invalidated, just meaning not validated because the validate button is still active, or validated. And the difference is, if you wanted to access some of these tools in this menu for sculpting, you can't right now because we have this menu still available to us because it's an invalidated object. What's the reasoning for this? There's a step where you can edit the geometry of the mesh before you commit it for sculpting, like before you make it ready to be sculpted. So we can come up to this 3-dot menu, and if you look here for the Division X, watch me lower. I can make this a much lower res sphere. For whatever reason, I may want that. I may also want the other way where I want it really high, and this means it's going to be really smooth even after I validate. What I want to set it to is around 150. So we were originally at 64 and we went up to 150, so you can see the jump. So more than double the original amount. And I'm gonna close that. That's all I wanted to do. And now I'm gonna hit validate because I need to access the face groups tool, which is over here. So I'm gonna hit validate. And now you can see all my tools here are active. And I've lost this invalidated toolbar, and it's gone once I start, sculpting. I'd have to undo all the way back. I haven't talked about this much, but if you're like a total beginner for Nomad, you most likely know that undo, redo are down here, but there are gestures tied to that. I can 2-finger tap on the screen to undo, and you can see I'm back to being invalidated. I can 3-finger tap to redo, and apparently you can't redo validations, but if I undo, redo, that's just undo, redo. And then you can even see it in the history. If I pin this open and then I undo, you can see I'm going through step by step, redo. Very handy. It's a huge time saver to use gestures. Hopefully you knew that. If you didn't, then there you go. Okay, we're going to validate again now. So this gives me access to face groups. That's what we're going to use. We're going to use face groups and hide. I like my hide there. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. So you can see I'm moving around some of my tools. You can just tap, hold, and drag around things. Put them in places that make sense in your mind. Okay, so face groups on. With face groups on, you get some other parameters over on this side. I have controls for what tool I want to paint my face group on. I also get the colors available to me for the face groups. Here we only have one, we want to actually at least have a secondary color. So I just hit the plus sign, I get an extra color, and now I need to pick a mode of painting. I could use the paintbrush, and then I would just paint like this. I'm going to 2-finger tap to undo. I want to scroll down because I actually want the rectangle tool. The reason why I rotated my camera, I'm going to tap and lock the camera. The reason why I rotated the camera and I also rotated my UV sphere in this direction is because when I make a selection, now when I turn, it's a perfect circle. I don't have to do a lot of work, because if I were in this view and I used the paintbrush to kind of paint the circle, I'd have to do a lot of work to make sure I didn't accidentally go too far. So this is painful to do by hand. Undo, undo, undo. And if we just lock to the right camera, lock it. Yeah, then we scroll down, pick the rectangle selection tool. And all I have to do is make a selection now. So it's a somewhat large opening, but it's not so far that it's like, that wide. So I'm going to just kind of eyeball what I think might be it, and then we'll just look. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to unlock my camera and turn it, and then lock it here. I actually think that's fine. I'm going to leave it at that. So all you want is 2 colors. And what I'm going to do now is just tap on my hide tool, which is next to face groups. And I'm going to just, with my finger, tap the yellow area. So it did what it said. It hid that face group, but you can still see the mesh exists there. So it's still a sphere, it's just hiding the color. But if I want to commit this hole, I can just hit delete. And now it's committed that geometry and this hole is permanent. So Megabot is made out of steel or metal, some kind of metal. And you can see here, it's pretty paper thin. So we need to add some thickness to give it the sense of, give it that realism that it's metal. And there's an easy way to do this. If you switch to, I wonder if I should move my select. I like my masks next to the mask and cell mask next to each other. So you can choose either mask or cell mask. It does not matter for this step. And then what I want you to do is just tap in the area around your geometry. Don't tap on the sphere itself. Just tap anywhere and you'll see it go dark. This is because the mask is applied to the entire object. So this is actually mask, and what mask means is I can't do any edits. If I went to draw on top of my mesh, I can't. I would have to unhide part of my mask. I'd have to unmask it like this so that it's brighter again. And then if I went to draw on it, I could, but I couldn't draw on the masked area. So you can see I can't do anything to something that's masked. So this is what we want, and there's a trick with the mask tool for adding thickness. It's not even a trick, it's built in, but so we need to have one of the mask or one of the tools for masking selected, cell mask or mask, and then we need to come up to this menu, tap it, and you're going to see thickness here, and you can already see that we have thickness applied here. We just need to decide how thick we want it. I think that's fine. It doesn't look very thick from the movie still that I have. Another thing that you can play around with while you're in this mode is this edge division, edge loop. You can decide how many edge loops you want. I'm going to leave it at 15. I think that's what it was when I first came in. I'm just going to leave it at that. If you like this extrusion, it's called extract, but I think of it as extruding. You can just hit the extract button. There's a toggle for none, extract, and split. Just make sure you have extract turned on, set your height for your thickness, set your edge loops, and then just hit the extract button. And it says nothing to extract, but that's not really true. So we need to come up to our scene menu now. And if you're wondering what all these like little dots inside are, it's because there's 2 overlapping spheres. So watch. We have our original. If I turn that off, then all those little dots are gone. And then the EXT is the extracted. So it creates a secondary object for you. And if I hide this, let's do that. So I've hid the extracted one. Let's turn on the original. Shouldn't be showing this one. Oh, because I still have this menu open. Okay, so here's our original one, the paper thin version. We don't need that anymore, so we can actually hit delete up here. And then if we unhide our thicker version and I turn off wire, there we go. We have the outer shell for the face. I'm gonna remember we were soloed down here. So I'm just gonna turn off solo and we'll see all our objects back again. I also hid the face one. So now we just need to move over our shell on top of the face. So tap to make active the shell, go here to the gizmo, and we have our snap to grid on still as 1. Let's see, there we go. And now all I have to do is just snap over one. That's why the grid snapping is so great. So we're done. I'm going to tap on the plane, and I'm going to move that back one so that we can actually see all sides. There we go. We're done with the main body. Obviously we need to add decals and paint it, but what remains is the limbs, and the exciting part is we only have to make one. As you can see, they're all copies of each other. And there's a couple ways that you can handle this in Nomad. You can actually do clones like we did for the spheres. You can mirror in some cases, and you can do instances. We're going to use instances, and I'm going to show you some of the power that you get from instances. Okay, so let's make the limb, which is the arm, the leg, and either the ears or antenna. I'm not sure. Okay. So what I found is, looking at the stills from the movie, that the spheres in the limbs are not actually true spheres. They're kind of squished. So let's tap on our torso sphere, and let's open our scene menu. Let's use this clone because of the other clone for some reason isn't working for me. And let's snap it over one. You can undo snap because we're going to scale it down slightly and try to match it to our reference image, and that's why we have the reference image. We're trying to scale it down and match the height, and then we'll squish it a little bit. I'm going to eyeball this. So to scale in one direction, just grab like the red dot and squish like this, and then we can move it over, and let's just do a rough. That's fine. And we can clone this for the other end of it too. So snap to front, scene menu, hit clone, and then let's bring the cloned over here. Grab the outer scale ring and scale down. You know, do your best, and let's try not to be too critical of, because really I don't know that anyone's going to be inspecting it so hard that if you were off by a tiny bit, they would know. I speaking from a person who loves having like exact measurements, I'm trying to be better about just like letting go, and like if it looks pretty good, it looks pretty good. Okay, so all that's left really for the arm is figuring out this octagon shape. I checked from the reference images, and yeah, there's 8 sides to this. So this is a cool little way to handle it. I wanted to show you how I first thought about this, just so you can, because this is beneficial for some other applications. I'm going to bring in a brand new shape. I'm just hiding everything at the moment. So what I want to do is come up to scene, add, we're going to the primitives. When I first thought about how to make the octagon, I was thinking about a sphere. And really what a sphere is, I also need to do one thing. I want to show you this real quick. You see how it looks like it's kind of smooth around the edge? That's actually what it is trying to do. It's a simulated smoothing. So if you come up to the material menu, right here, smooth shading is set to auto, and you can see it's underlined currently for on. To turn it off, here's on, here's off. I want to be able to see. So if we turn on the wireframe for this, you can see that really this cylinder is made up of a bunch of sides. And if I just reduce the number of sides, I can make an octagon. So if you tap on the 3, so this is why an invalidate object is kind of helpful. If I tap on the 3 dots and we do the same thing we were kind of doing earlier with lowering the division X, let's lower it to, we would need to go to 8, obviously, for an octagon. So let's go, there's 12. I'm going to try to go to 8, but here's the drawback. There is no 8. There's not 11 or 10 or 9. It goes from 12 straight to 6. But from 6, it can go to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Or not 1 or 2, sorry. To 3, obviously it collapses if we go any. So you can get a triangle shape, square, pentagon, hexagon. But unfortunately, no other numbers in there. I wish it was this easy. I just lower it and I'm done. But don't fret, there's another way to do this. I wanted to show you that because that's still really cool. It's got a lot of uses. If you're trying to do a pentagon or a hexagon, done. This is a good way to do it. You can do that with a lot of primitives too. You can lower the resolution of any of the primitives while it's invalidated. Okay, let's get rid of this. This was not the way that worked out for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just snap to the front view, or snap to, we'll leave it like this. That's fine. We'll go up to scene, add, and let's go to tube. There's a tube tool over here on the right, and you would have to manually draw this one. If you hit tube, it automatically, Let me see why. Okay. Let me make sure that gizmo is turned off. Okay. So it got added where the sphere was because the sphere was selected. We want to make sure gizmo's turned off, and then let's go scene, add, and then tube. And now the tube is in the home location where the blue and red axis lines cross each other. And you can see that it's already set up like a cylinder, just like before. I'm going to do the same thing, come up to material menu, and just turn off smooth shading here. Okay, so we have it's really identical to what we had for a cylinder. But in this case, we can actually, there we go. In this case, we can actually access a profile shape. So here, even though it looks kind of inaccessible, it's kind of muted, tap on profile. You can see that our cylinder is now a square because when you turn on profile, it's driven by this shape right here, this square shape. Watch me edit this live. You can see that we can do all kinds of shapes. We can be really creative with this tool. In one of the more recent updates, you can scale this down and you have all kinds of room to really make, like you can increase the resolution by a lot now. So reset. It's easy to make an octagon. A square is half of an octagon. So 4 points, we need 8 points. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch into this full screen mode by tapping this icon. And I'm going to 2-finger pinch and zoom and scale it down a little bit. All we need to do is look at these intersection of the shape, the square shape with the red axis line and the green axis line. And we just need to tap and add a black dot. I say black dot because if you tap too many times, it turns white, and that is what creates rounding. And then if you tap again, it goes to a straight. So let's add at the green intersections 2 dots, and then at the red 2 dots. And all we need to do is drag out now 2 grid squares. So you should have snap on. You can see it right here. Just go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Oops, that was 3. 1, 2, and oops. If you ever need to get rid of a dot, just drag it over another one and then let go. Okay, so that is an octagon. If you kind of tilt your head, it's at a 45-degree angle, but it is a perfect octagon. Okay, so I'm going to tap out of this and go back here, and that's it. We're done. I'm going to hit the X. Our shape is ready to be used. And what I'm going to do is come in here and turn back on all of our things. And let's switch to the front camera view. We've lined up our 2 spheres for the arm. And really all you need to do is rotate. I'm going to turn off perspective because that's messing with. So there's a perspective button. You can have real world perspective or make everything kind of flat. Okay, front camera view. This whole invalidated toolbar can be moved down to the bottom by tapping the arrow right here. So up or down. I'll put it down right now. We need to rotate our I keep wanting to say hexagon. That's why I keep hesitating. Octagon shape. So I'm turning on gizmo. We have our snap rotation on. I'm going to grab the blue rotation handle and just turn it until it snaps. And now I'm going to just drag this over. Here's where looking at our reference image is helpful. So I'm going to scale this down till roughly it looks like it will line up with this edge. And what I'm going to do is switch out of gizmo mode to this other invalidated mode. So here's the toggle that I'm clicking. Now I can drag this out. Oops. The reason why that just happened is because there's another shape near it. So I need to hide our reference image for just a moment. I'm going to go to scene. I'm going to find our plane and hide it. I'm also going to hide, I need to hide this sphere too, because it's going to also get in the way. Let me see, let me tap it and then hide it. Let's rough this for a moment. So I have grid on. I have to tap front here and then lock it so that we can see the grid. Now I'm going to pull this out a bit, and then to help us, I just need to turn on our reference image really close to the end of our thing. It's a little more, so I need to turn off the grid so that there's not grid snapping. Okay, so I'm going to hide our reference image. I'm going to hide our grid because with grid on, it's going to grid snap. I just need to pull this out a little bit more. That's probably too far. Okay, and then let's turn on our reference image again. Pretty good. I think that's a good spot to stop. So we have this, and now if we look at our reference image without the octagon on, we've overshot it just a little bit. I'll bring it back a little, and then we got to taper it. So here I can shrink the tapering. Here I need to hide. I know it's kind of counterintuitive. just need to bring it back just a little bit. Okay, good enough. All right, so now we need to come down. So we have our tube, make sure our tube is selected, which is our octagon shape. And the radius here, I need to tab it one more time so that there's 2 lines in the icon, and that gives us 2 scale, like radius scale controls here. And here I can scale down to match our reference image. I know that the length is a little bit off. And then that's it. So let's hide our plane one more time. We'll just do a little bit more stretching. Okay, good. And now I think we're all synced up perfectly. And we can hide our reference image for just a moment. And my tube is for some reason hidden. And then let's turn on back all the shapes. Let's hide our wireframe so we can see this. So there it is. I'm going to unlock our camera and then we can move around. So these are all the shapes that we need. We've done all the hard part now. I need to make 5 more of these. And let's just take a look at both ends. Looks good. So I want to join this unit of these 2 spheres here and here and this tube all as one unit. And what I can do is come up to my scene and select all those things. So this one, I'm just adding a check mark to the ones that I need. This one, where is it? Where's that other one? This one. Check mark, check mark, check mark. You can see I have 3 check marks for the things that I want to join. First, I need to come up to join. So the 2 spheres in the tube, hit join. And here's the first problem that I experienced. And I'm doing it again because I want to talk about what has to happen. I'm going to undo. The tube looks very sharp. If I redo back to when we join them. The reason this is happening is I have my tube selected. Let's go up to that materials menu. And remember we turned smooth shading off for our tube. Let's take a look at our spheres. Smooth shading is actually on for both spheres. So when you join objects, there can only be smooth shading on or off for the joined object. It can't be both. So it decided the 2 spheres have smooth shading on and the tube has smooth shading off. Like, let's just go with the majority and let's turn smooth shading on for the joined object, which created smooth shading for the tube. So here's how we're going to go and get around that is if I turned off smooth shading for the sphere off, you can see that it gets faceted. Do you see that now that you can see once this one's smooth and then this one has like faceting on the surface here. We're going to take so we have smooth shading off for the sphere, but we're going to take the sphere and just increase its subdivisions just to make it smoother. So I'm going up to 7. I'm going to hit validate. I'm going to do the same over here. I'm going to select it and turn off smooth shading for this sphere. And then I'm going to move post subdivision. Post subdivision is just subdividing it a couple extra times to make it super smooth. The more geometry, the smoother it'll look. So now everything that I'm about to join, the 2 spheres and the tube, all have smooth shading off. So now when I join, there won't be that issue. So I need to go to my scene menu, check these both in the tube, and now hit join. So now that's a single joined object, but doesn't have that weird smooth shading problem. Okay, now that they're joined, I'm going to go back to my scene menu, and this will be considered our master, because we're going to start using instances. And when you create an instance of something, both of them will have the same properties no matter what you do. So let me show you. I'm going to clone, or I'm going to instance this. So our tube, maybe we should rename it. I'm going to hit the 3 dots, name, call it limb. And then I'm going to hit the instance button here, instance. And now we have limb 1. What I'm going to do is drag out our master, our original first limb. And I'm going to show you what happens when you start to paint it. So the properties of the master are going to be inherited by the instances. And that's true of even depending on what this target mode is. If I have it set to vertex and I start to clay sculpt, you can see that instances will adopt those properties as well, only when you're in that vertex kind of mode. Okay, so here, now we know that we have something that we can repeat. One thing I want to do is set up a little bit of the prep work ahead of time. I want to set the pivot point for the arm because I want to pose it. I want to move it around and I want it to pivot around. I want the arms to pivot around this sphere and the legs to pivot around the hips, and then the ears or antenna just pivot around the head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap to the front camera view. I'm going to lock it, and I'm going to turn on our grid. There it is. And this might be a good scenario for using X-ray. So let's tap on, I'm tapping on this limb here, and I'm going to hit X-ray. And why I'm turning on X-ray is because I want to see this green and red cross. That's what I'm going to use as my pivot centering. So I'm going to pick the limb, turn on my gizmo. Gizmo has to be on for this step to work, because with gizmo off, this little square here is blank, but with gizmo on, pivot's now available to me. So I'm going to tap pivot. Don't worry about that little menu that popped up. Only worry about the gizmo control itself over here. I'm going to grab this red arrow, and I need to move this to align. So I'm pinching and zooming. I'm zooming in, but I'm pinching the same thing. And I need to align my crosshair with this this center axis. And now when it's lined up, just tap the pivot button off. Now we have this nice rotation. You can even see the other one rotating. Pretty cool. The manipulation works in both directions of instances. Okay, something's off about the pivot point. I need to fix the original one. Okay, I'm selected my limb 1. I'm going to hit pivot again. You can see that it's not centered. I don't know what I did. Just know that I accidentally undo sometimes with my 2-finger taps. Okay, let's try not to do that. I think we're good. Fix my mistake. So limb 2, make sure our target group is set to auto. Okay, so I'm going to hit instance. We have rotation snap now on. I'm going to rotate. Let's zoom in and look. That looks pretty good. Okay, so limb 1 and limb 2 are arms. I'm going to check mark limb 1 and 2, and I'm going to hit instance. So now 3 and 4, I'm going to just move that below, are legs. And we're going to turn on snap to grid, increment of 1, and just pull down. These are the legs now. We'll rename them, I guess. You could do limb 1 and 2 again, hit instance, and then we're going to move those up. And now we have our ears. Let's rename these things. Okay, so limb 5 is the right ear. Rename right ear. Sorry for this part, I'll speed it up. Left ear. Okay, there we go. So limb is our master, and I don't even know if you really need the master since all instances will be communicating with each other, but I like to have that original that I can still separate. Okay, so we have all these things. I can turn off X-ray now. It looks kind of funny, but we're going to do the posing. So I'm just going to tap it. I'm going to set snap rotation to 45 instead of 90. And now one pull, tap here, one pull gives us our pose. Move up, tap that, move up, and there we go. Let's turn on our reference image and see how we did. Pretty good. If you can't see it, must be right behind there, perfectly aligned, right? There it is. Just kind of moved it over a little bit so we can, pretty good. Okay, so success. We can turn off our reference image. It's no longer needed. And let's paint some things. I'm going to change our background color while we paint, just so it helps be a little more friendly to the darker colors. We can turn off our grid for the moment. There we go. Unlock our camera. Move around the space and see what it looks like. Pretty cool. All right, so Megabot is black metal, and then with some decals, that's it. It's a really easy paint job. What I'm going to do is, find a color that's not too abrasive. Okay, so let's start with the center sphere, and let's tap on here. Let's zoom in so we can see it really well. Here is where adjusting our environment map will be important. I'm going to go ahead and just skip ahead for you. I had set mine to 7.5. It's going to be really hot. It's going to seem hot. 7.5 maybe, somewhere around there. So you can see how blown out it seems, but nice and bright. It's a nice white starting point. You don't want this dingy gray. You want to start with a brighter white when you're painting. Okay, so I'm going to now select this paint down here. I'm going to just pick a color that I think looks good. Here's another thing, metalness. He is metal. I'm going to crank metalness all the way up. roughness will determine how super chrome-like it is. I should also pin this one open. So the roughness goes from a chrome finish to weathered to a flat. So Megabot, he's a battlebot. He's been through a lot. He's kind of weathered. I don't know if he was ever chrome shiny to begin with, but we kind of want this range of reflectiveness, but not that you can see definition. It's kind of blurred. So I like that. And if I just hit paint all, we could start there. Let's say that that is the right value. So this will remain. I just need to tap more objects and then hit paint all and just keep tapping. Paint all. I could do this, save myself. Paint all. But what I wanted to show you just before I did that is I just need to tap one of my instances of these like arms and legs and hit paint all, and then it paints everything. But you could just check mark everything and hit paint all. Okay, done for the painting part of it. I know, right? Too easy. So you can play with that. You can do lots more with paint. You could be very specific. You could have rusty parts, or you could paint that part in with the paintbrush. We're just going to go with this full one color paint job, no variation yet. The next thing would be fun to do is add the face, start making him more real. So what we're going to do is tap on the face, and we need to increase. So it's invalidated, and you know this because you see this bar and the validation button. So we can come to the three dots, and I'm going to turn on wireframe. Hard to see, so I'm going to zoom in. So we did the texture before. We applied the texture for the reference image to a plane, and that plane only had two faces on it. Very low resolution geometry, but the image still looked very sharp. I'm going to be using a different method to apply the face. I'm going to use the sticker method, which I picked up from Dave Reed. Thank you, Dave Reed. And we're going to use that method, but to make this work, we need a higher density mesh. So I'm going to increase the post subdivision to 7 and validate this face. Hopefully that's enough. We'll know fast. Okay, here's how you make the sticker tool, because there is not a sticker tool in Nomad by default when you first install it. So the sticker tool, if you look at the icons for sticker and paint, these two, I was trying to put them next to each other, but that ain't happening unless I move this one. Okay, so paint and sticker are the same icon because they are the same tool. You can clone tools simply by selecting them and then tapping them one more time to get this extra menu. Just hit the clone button and then name this whatever you want. It does not have to be sticker, but feel free to use sticker. So I would name it sticker, and then I would hit OK, and then I would get this tool. There's going to be a couple of small details that we're going to change about sticker from paint. Very, very minor. So in sticker, your new tool, just make sure you have it selected. Tap up here on this sort of like sparkle. It might be one of these icons, but the second icon in that row. So here, I just want you to look at the screen, and I'm just going to point out a few things. Here, it's just set to screen and lock radius for the stroke. You can look at the rest of this. Just match what I'm showing you on yours. For alpha, we have surface, and then scaling, I just have 0.707. Rotation, I have this locked. In some scenarios, for sticker tool, you want it locked, and sometimes you don't. If you're trying to do like a randomized pattern, you definitely don't want lock on. But for aligning this face, keeping it perfectly straight when we apply it, you want lock on. And then for fall off, for the preset, just tap on this little grid and make sure you have one, this flat line. And that's it. A circle option down at the bottom. For filter, here are the settings. Front facing vertex only means it'll only apply it on one side. If you have that off, it'll apply on the front and back simultaneously. That's useful in some cases, but here I'm going to keep the front facing vertex only checked. And then here are the other settings. Just take a look at those. And then pressure, same thing for the grid. We have it set to the one here. So the flat lines, and that's it. If you have all those settings set, that's all you need. Sticker. The other thing that's going to drive the actual sticker being applied is to come over to this paint option, tap on it, and here where you have the color value, we need to tap into this box for the color value. So tap into it. I had already loaded those images. If you don't have them in there, which you shouldn't, I've done this tutorial a couple times, so they're already set in here for me, but you can hit import and then just like before, go to photos or files. So import button right there. For me, I'm just going to select it, and now it's loaded up. You need to set this color to white, pure white. If you apply it with some other color, it's going to be a mixed, his face is yellow, it's going to be blended with red. So go to white to make sure that's set up. I'm going to turn, for this one, I'm going to turn metalness off, because metalness can be applied to the sticker when you're applying it. And then the roughness, you can see a preview right here, by the way. So you can rotate it so you can see the shine on it, like how much roughness. The more roughness you remove, the shinier it gets. So just find a happy spot here. Something that gives a little bit of reflection is fine. Okay, let's try that. I'm going to close this menu. Okay, so I'm going to hit solo. I almost want to come up to this menu. Let's switch to unlit for just a moment, because I want to find this center point right here. You see it? Okay, so the sticker, I'm going to just tap on this and now just pull back. So tap and pull back. And without that other shell around it. So here's one thing I'm wondering about this. We tried to make this more dense, and I think the resolution's too low of the sphere. We need to back up a little bit. So here I did undo back to before it was validated. We need to make this really high density. I'm going to increase post subdivisions to 8. Okay, I'm just going to do 1 and 8. 1 and 8, and then I'm going to hit validate. Okay, hopefully that's enough now. Okay, back to our sticker. Everything looks good there. The resolution of this sphere has to be pretty high for our sticker application to look, so that looks much cleaner than the previous one. No pixelation, I mean slight amounts of it, but that actually has to do with my image. My image I scaled up from a smaller image that I found, and then I just added some extra rough edges around it. Okay, one other thing that we need to be able to see is the outer sphere, this one. So let's check mark that. So we need this as a reference point. So we want to contain our face within it. So I'm tapping the inner sphere. We're going to apply, tap. We have our sticker tool on still. Tap and drag. We want to be able to see the rough edges and not have it be hidden inside of that shell. I also noticed that it feels like it's a little more left, so you can keep reapplying this. Oh, I have symmetry on too. Sorry, symmetry. We can talk about that another time. But the turn it off. Okay, we're gonna tap and drag, and you can keep doing this. You can keep picking a different starting point and just try to. That's what I'm doing. Trying to make it good without taking too long, but too late. It's already taking a bunch of time. Okay, that one's kind of good. I was just trying to center it better. Cool, I like that. I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to snap the snap cube to the front and lock it. Okay, so we want to tap our head. Let's go to gizmo. We'll switch this back to 90 for the rotation snap. And I'm going to grab the green rotation handle, and we need to, so I went 2 times to rotate to the back. And now with our sticker tool still selected, we just need to go here, tap on our happy face, and switch to our angry face, and then the same application applies. Let's zoom in. I'm going to tap in the center, pull out here. It looks like it's a little to the right, so I'm just going to tap and pull here. I know. There's no real adjustments after you've applied it. You just got to apply it again. Okay, I think that looks good. So we have 2 faces. If we come back to our gizmo, kind of rotate there. The thing that we have to get rid of is there's a, let me hide the other one here. Hide it. We have this in-between point, right? Where if we look around our object, there's all these missing. So what we're going to do is just fill that in. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to come up to my cell mask tool up here on the top right toolbar. And then I'm going to come over to the left side and pick rectangle as my selection. And I want to select everything here in the middle in the black. I don't want to select any of the face though. Just cover this this 2-toned area, the 2 grays. Select it all, and then we're going to hit invert right here, because you can see here the faces are lighter, and then here they're darker. When they get darker, they're masked, and when they're masked, they're protected, and we want to protect the faces from being painted. So I'm going to go to my paint here. I need to remove the face, so I'm going to select it and then pick this blank one. So here, and then I'm just going to go up to the eyedropper. I guess I didn't need to remove the face, because when I eyedrop, it should have removed it. Okay, so I'm just picking the color. I took the eyedropper tool and picked the black here in the image, and now I'm just going to hit paint all, and then that fills in that, and I can come down to here and hit clear all now, and now we have both sides of the face. Okay, so I'm going to come back up to my lighting here and switch from unlit back to lit PBR so we can see our, and I'm going to turn off the wireframe. I'm also going to turn off solo, and we hid our, I'm coming up to scene and turning back on my UV sphere exterior, rotate our faces, turn on gizmo, got our snap turned on, rotate it. Let's rotate this. There we go. Okay, and then let's turn back on our exterior sphere. Okay, so there is, I'm going to rotate the lighting to be a little bit brighter. So this I'm doing the 3-finger tap and drag, which is the same as this rotation. So you can see our face looked a little dark, but also we just need to rotate the lighting so it looks a little bit. So what's left? We have everything painted. We just need the scratch textures. Let's go into, it's like painting originally, but we just need to go into select an object, go into this menu, material, and scroll down to the textures. This time I'm going to apply it to the roughness channel. So here's roughness, and roughness just means all that metalness and the roughness channel in the paint, like here, paint roughness. You can see roughness and metalness. I'm going to eyedrop this so it goes back. When you apply a roughness alpha sort of mask, a texture, it will ignore that metalness roughness for the areas that are black for the image we provided. So remember, we went up to, close this, went up to this materials menu, went down to the textures area. We're going to tap the square here for roughness. And then in the zip file I gave you, we have this image. I just found it on the internet. And you can see, we can still see our metalness and roughness, but in our image for this, you can see that there's a lot of gray and white, and only certain parts. So all the gray is like the 50% gray color. It doesn't affect anything that's like very neutral gray. The things that are white are being affected. So all we need to do now is tap on everything and do the same procedure. For the arms, it will be applied to everything because those are instances. So we're going to come up to material, down to textures, to the roughness channel, tap on that, same thing. Yes, it's a little tedious. Here you can see all the limbs have inherited that. We need to do it on just the remaining things. So here's what we can do. I wonder if this is possible. Let's try selecting 2 things. Here, roughness, photos, time saver, if you can just check mark everything. Okay, that worked. I should have just, let me undo. So we can just do this. Check mark everything. I'm just adding check marks. Go to material and do the same process. Let me say none first, and then roughness, add it, photos, add it, and then you don't have to one by one select it. One thing that you're going to maybe be annoyed by and notice is that if you look at the scratch textures of these 2 spheres, they are identical. So you can tap on one of them, come up to the same material, tap on the image, and then just grab the rotation here. Here, I'll pull it to the side so you can see it. Just grab the rotation, and you can see I'm rotating the texture. And now those 2 won't seem like mirror images of each other. I know that our arms might seem repetitive if you look closely. So you can do the same for them. You can actually just take these and you could just rotate, not move, but you could just rotate the actual leg itself however you want to. So up to you. But I think the kind of cool thing about putting this roughness effect over the paint is it sells the fact that even the paint's getting scuffed in places, and it really kind of blends everything, as in, he doesn't have a nice shiny new face and everywhere else is scratched. We've scratched like everything, but I love that you can only kind of notice it when it hits the right light. Like you can see the scratches and then they start to fade away when the light's not hitting them. Just like the real world sort of scratches. Sometimes you don't see scratches on glass until the right lighting hits it. So kind of cool. Okay, that's it. And then let's take a victory lap here. If you come up to this this Nomad Sculpt icon. Oh, before that, we didn't do our finishing post-processing. Oh my gosh, I almost sent you off without doing that part. There's only a couple things that I did for post-processing. So here, it's sort of unnatural, the fact that there's no shadowing happening where two objects meet. There should be some shadowing. There should also be some reflections of each other. Like if I pointed this face, the yellow face, more towards the torso, the yellow should cast onto the rest of the body. You can do that. I was having some problems. So what we're going to do is so this is global. You don't even have to have a specific object selected. I can turn off my gizmo tool altogether. It doesn't matter what's selected because post-process is the entire scene. So come up to this little like shutter icon, and then post-process is here. You need to check mark it. And then if you have no other check marks selected here, then post-process doesn't really do anything. It just gives you access to these. So let's do reflection. And then reflection is attempting to do what you think. So you can see up here, there's a little bit of yellow being cast at certain angles. You can even see a little bit of yellow in this reflection. So that helps already with the realism. It's also giving you sort of this faux shadow. Reflection is just kind of on or off. So if I turn it off and you came to ambient occlusion and turned that on, this is sort of a more natural shadowing. Ambient occlusion attempts to figure out where two objects are getting close to each other, creates the shadow. Some options like ambient occlusion have parameters that you can control, like size here. I can make it smaller, strength. So, and some don't. Reflections doesn't have any controls. The problem is it's so kind of harsh, but it is very realistic in terms of like seeing the yellow being cast. It's kind of a choice because I think the reflection is somewhat poor here. So, oops, wrong menu. So I turned it off, but I did leave the ambient occlusion, and maybe you just sort of up that a little bit. The problem is you're not getting the yellow reflection. But I think this looks kind of, let's take a look at before and after here. So yeah, I love the shadowing under the chin or the top head sphere. So that's cool. Global illumination is partly what I was talking about. Light is supposed to bounce from one object onto another object with global illumination. But let's see. I didn't notice anything at all happen. So I just kind of left it off because you don't want, even if I turned up the strength. So you don't need extra processing going on if it's not giving you a visual effect. So ambient occlusion's good. Also, bloom's good if you had a lot of lights in the scene, but bloom even affects, watch this face. It's almost like light hitting certain parts of the model will bloom the light around it. So I didn't like the look of that one, turned it off. But tone mapping is a lot of fun. This is just like Photoshop at this point. You're kind of playing with like exposure controls. What I don't like about this is you can easily get into territory where you're washing out the color of the face in order to get some of the other things. So watch on and off. Like I like the color just feels natural without the tone mapping. So the only thing I'm doing out of all the post-processing is turning up ambient occlusion, and you can look at my values, but I encourage you to just play with it. I'm encouraging you to play with all these things too. Curvature is kind of like drawing some of the lines. It's just fun to color grading too. You can get into some really cool things. There's obviously vignette and grain. Pixel art, you can just totally like crank up that's sharpness, sorry. With pixel art, you can turn up the resolution. You can make it very 8-bit. So a lot of fun stuff. Anyways, I'm just going to leave it with ambient occlusion, and then you can also come in here and just decide you want the exposure to be even brighter than I had it at 7.5, but 11.7. Okay, and then to export, save an image, come to this file folder, scroll to the very bottom. You have a render section. If you turn on transparent background, it'll ignore this blue background and actually have a transparent PNG. If you want a final size, you can leave it at the screen size, it won't include all these tool menus. Watch what happens when I hit export. So I have it at screen. The blue background's gone. It's also transparent. So if you put it now if you want to use this image for some other composition in Photoshop, you could put your own background behind it. It's completely transparent. And then this is ready to go. You just need to come up here to the little share button next to the done at the top, hit share, and then, share it to wherever you want to share it. That's it. Pretty easy. It's a long tutorial, but I hope you learned a bunch. All right. Thanks for watching. Keep making things, and I'll see you in the next video.